Comparison between the Spalding TF series basketballs and the Wilson Forge series basketballs. I'm Tony, welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
In the zone, yeah, we stay ready. Haters always trying to crash, we just stay steady. Keep a real tight squad, yeah, we stay ready. We gon' keep it moving, pushing hard and catch you in a webby.
Today we're comparing the biggest American brand basketballs. We're comparing their signature composite leather basketball series against each other. For Spalding, this is their composite leather series, their signature series, and for Wilson, same thing. Now, just so you understand how and why I'm comparing these two specific basketballs is because this is the Wilson TF 250. This series of basketballs on the spectrum of composite leather basketballs, meaning over here you have the rubber end of the composite leather spectrum. Basketballs that, if you didn't know they were composite leather, you would just think that the basketball was straight up genuine leather. On that spectrum, the Spalding TF series of basketballs are engineered to be more towards the leather end of that composite leather spectrum, whereas the Wilson Forge series are meant to be more towards the rubber end of that spectrum. So when we talk about this basketball specifically, this is the Wilson Forge Plus UV. According to Wilson, this is the highest level basketball in their series. Remember, this series is on the rubber end of the spectrum. On the Spalding TF series, this basketball is considered the lowest tier in that series. Only, not because it's a bad quality basketball or anything like that, it's only because since this series is more towards the leather end of the spectrum, this basketball is the basketball that's considered the closest towards the rubber end of that spectrum. So the Wilson basketball is the basketball that's most towards the middle in terms of the composite leather spectrum, just like this basketball is considered the closest towards the middle of that composite leather spectrum. That's why I'm comparing these basketballs against each other, because this is the basketball that's the most leather feeling basketball that's on the rubber end of the spectrum, and this is the most rubber feeling basketball in a series of basketballs that is supposed to be on the leather end of that composite leather spectrum. So since this is the most leathery feeling basketball and this is the most rubbery feeling basketball, they pretty much line up right next to each other in the very middle of that composite leather spectrum. That's why they're apt to be compared to each other, especially considering they are the basketballs in the middle of the signature series of both companies. Now, just something for you to keep in mind as you watch me review these basketballs and rate them. I'm an outdoor basketball player, so I prefer basketballs that are feel conducive to outdoor play. For me, that means basketballs that are more rubbery, that feel more grippy and tacky on my fingertips. I'm only 5'8", I don't have huge hands, so because of that, I like basketballs that when they're on my hands, on my fingertips, feel kind of rubbery and tacky. I need more control because my hands are not huge. I like basketballs that feel more tacky and grippy on my fingertips. For you, it may be different. For me, I like rubbery feeling basketball. That being said, when we get into my 5 criteria for breaking down basketballs, the first would be the material that the basketball is made out of. Now, these are obviously both composite leather basketballs. And you need to keep in mind that just because, according to Spalding, this is like the lowest tier TF basketball they have, it doesn't mean that it's a poor quality, low quality basketball. It just means that because the TF series is meant to be more towards the leather end of the composite leather spectrum, this ball is considered the most rubbery out of the TF series. But when we're talking about outdoor composite leather basketballs, basketballs that are considered to be used for outdoor basketballs, even though technically both balls say they're both indoor and outdoor, and when you get them in your hands, you can tell they're intended more so for outdoor play. So when you're talking about outdoor composite leather basketballs, the materials of these balls are top tier. You're not going to find a better quality outdoor composite leather basketball quality. You will definitely find a higher quality basketball in terms of, many of you probably are familiar with the TF 1000 basketball. That basketball is primarily an indoor basketball. It's intended for indoor use, but if you get your hands on a brand new TF 1000, it's going to feel amazing, especially compared to either one of these basketballs. But that basketball is intended for indoor use. When you're talking specifically about outdoor use, these basketballs are on the highest level of outdoor composite leather basketballs. as far as their materials are concerned. And the pebbling on each basketball complements each basketball perfectly. There's nothing special about either one of the pebblings on these basketballs. They're both pretty flat, they're both pretty forgettable, but that's fine because they fit each basketball perfectly the way they're meant to be. For instance, in the hand, this Forge basketball feels a little bit more leathery than this Spalding TF basketball. And since this basketball feels a little bit more leathery, it has a little bit more pronounced peb on it. That makes sense because the more silky and soft a basketball feels, you need a little bit more pronounced pebbling on the basketball to compensate for that. But when a basketball feels a little bit more rubbery on its panels, right, you don't really need more pronounced pebbling because the panel already feels a little bit more tacky. So both pebbling on each basketball are perfect for what they're supposed to be. And you put the pebbling together with the material that they're made of, and again, you get the highest level of outdoor composite leather basketballs. There may be other basketballs that can reach this level of quality, but there's nothing that I'm aware of that surpasses this quality of basketball. I will say that if I were just sitting down watching a game and I wanted a basketball in my hand while I was watching a game, I would want this basketball in my hand just because it feels more leathery, right? It feels more comfy, it feels more luxurious, it has that softness, that silkiness, a little bit of that cushion in the basketball, right? It just feels like a good quality basketball to have in your hand if I were just sitting around watching a game. If I were to be playing though, I would like this basketball better just because it has that sticky tackiness a little bit more than this basketball has. So if I'm on the court and I'm actually looking for control and precision, this ball would have a little bit of an edge over this ball just because it feels a little bit more tacky in the hand. Grip channels are the most differentiating criteria between these two basketballs, and it's rather surprising because Spalding basketballs usually have pretty forgettable, unnoticeable grip channels. But in this basketball, I'm very impressed by how actually noticeable the grip channels are. They're deeper than usual, they're as wide as usual, but the great thing about the grip channels on this basketball is the rubber inseam on here is very tacky, very rubbery, very grippy. Great grip inside the grip channels of this Spalding basketball. That's usually not the case. With Wilson, they usually just get grip channels right. They usually just know how to do grip channels on a basketball. On this basketball, the grip channels are nice and wide like they usually are. They're not quite as deep as I would expect them to be, but the major problem with this basketball is the inseam in this basketball, this rubber strip going all around the basketball. Initially, when the basketball is really new, completely brand new, it's slippery. That's never happened with a Wilson basketball with me before. I've never experienced a Wilson basketball that has slippery inseams in its grip channels. Now, like I said with my original review of specifically this basketball, maybe once you break this basketball in over a few weeks or a few months, maybe these rubber inseams will break down a little bit and not be as slick and therefore not as slippery, but at least very brand new, this basketball feels completely slippery in these inseams, and to me that's not really acceptable. That's not something that you should have to deal with when it comes to having a brand new basketball. Now don't get me wrong, they are rubber and they do feel a little bit of rubbery on your fingertips, but because they're so slick, because it's so flat and slick, it's just not acceptable how actually slippery these inseams are. Especially in direct comparison to the Wilson inseams, these inseams are actually better than any other Wilson basketball that I can remember or think of, especially composite Spalding basketballs. The inseams on here are just exactly what you would want for an inseam on a grip channel on a basketball. I can palm this basketball easily because of the stickiness of these inseams. I cannot do that with this Wilson. It just won't stick because the inseams are slippery, and that's not a problem that you should have with any basketball. And that complicates things because the material of this basketball, the panels are so nice, they feel so good that they're immediately negated by where you would put your fingertips. If you catch this ball on a pass and your fingertips, you'll automatically go to the grip channels because that's how you like to shoot a basketball. Like most people shoot a basketball that way. When you put your fingertips here and they slide around and that's where you use to shoot, that's going to be a major problem unless and until these grip channels get broken in and become more tacky the way they're supposed to be. Like this Wilson Forge basketball feels great and amazing in the hand unless and until you put your fingertips on the grip channels and then you're like, well, that's not right. That's not the way it's supposed to be at all. Talking about durability, because these basketballs are, you know, on that top tier level of composite leather basketballs, the durability is going to be as long as you could reasonably expect for any basketball. The higher quality of the basketball, the longer its lifespan is going to be, and thus, since these basketballs are both on that top tier, they're going to last you as long as you could possibly reasonably expect. Factoring that into the value of each basketball, both these basketballs are about $40 in 2024, and to me that makes sense because, like I said, right, the TF series on the leather end of the spectrum, the Forge series on the rubber end of the spectrum. This is the highest level, this is the lowest level. They come together right in the middle of that composite leather spectrum. $40 to be right in the middle of that spectrum and be top tier, top level composite leather outdoor basketballs. $40 for each basketball I think is exactly the right price. So these basketballs are very comparable to each other. As you can probably tell, I do have a pretty big beef with this Forge basketball, that beef being these unacceptable grip channels. Whereas not only do I not have a beef with the Spalding TF 250, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised by it. The problem and the conundrum comes into play where this basketball just feels so good. The paneling, the material of it feels so good, so nice, so high level and luxurious that you can't just discount this basketball. It's certainly not a bad basketball. It just has almost one kind of fatal flaw. But again, if you break this basketball in properly, maybe this goes away and then this is just a really great basketball. But unless and until then, for me, the fact that the inseams are slippery and the paint on the logos of the basketball is a little bit slippery as well, I don't like that. Remember, I'm a rubbery kind of guy. I want and need as much grip as I possibly get. Anything that adds slipperiness to the basketball, I'm not a fan of. That doesn't mean that this basketball will not fit you or cannot fit you. It very well may be perfect for you. Like if I were a shooter, this would be my choice of a basketball. But I'm not a shooter, I'm a pass first point guard. I require control and grip on my basketball. So for me, this would be my go-to basketball. If I had both of these basketballs and I had to choose which applications I would use each for, I would say for me in my game, I would use this basketball for practice because it's softer, because it's more silky, because the grip and control are a little less precise because of the slipperiness of it. When you practice with a slipperier basketball, it forces you to pay more attention to what you're doing, and that's a good thing when it comes to practice. But if we're talking about games and competition, and when I don't have to think about how my hands are interfacing with the basketball itself because it's not a problem, I can then use that brain space that I would be using to concentrate my grip and feel on the basketball. I can use that to now think about what's going on and happening in the game itself instead. So I would use this basketball for practice, this basketball in the game because it's more grippy and I don't have to think about my grip as I'm using it. But when I'm practicing, I do want to pay closer attention to how my hands are interfacing with the basketball. That's just going to make me a more precise basketball player if I practice that way. So hopefully I was accurate and I was clear with describing the differences between these two similar basketballs, and hopefully you'll be able to decide for yourself which one would be better to complement your personal game. If this basketball did help you to understand these basketballs better and give you a better idea of which basketball you may want to choose for yourself, then please subscribe to the channel. And anybody that's experienced either one of these basketballs, let us know your experience down in the comments so we can make a better, more informed decision. But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does hitting that thanks button highlight whatever comment you make, making it stand out from any other comment, but hitting that thanks button also directly supports the channel. So for anyone that does hit that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, Comment, like I said, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I'll see you guys next week.
Hey, it took a little while, but we ain't looking back. Now we sitting at the top, yeah, we on the map. On a run for the trophy, yeah, we need it ASAP. Graduated from the fake, no snakes, no cap. Pop the champagne now, we gon' celebrate.